Hi everybody, welcome to Off-Road Ramble. Today, or on this episode, I'm joined with Alan Stewart. He is one of the first Grenadier owners. We'll talk about that in a minute. Always like to find out with the Grenadier the type of people that own the vehicles or want to own the vehicles. You know, always unique characters, come from a unique background. So we've asked Alan to come in and talk about himself in regards to the vehicle, and hopefully in a bit we'll also have a look at the vehicle as well. So we'll go around and see some of the things he's done to it. So Alan, if you just like a brief introduction to yourself, tell us why you're here, and tell us a little bit about your Grenadier.
Sure. Well, I bought my Grenadier from Warner Ineos here in Utah, and being one of the early adopters, I didn't have a whole lot of choices of dealerships, and I think I'm truly blessed to have been introduced to the Warners and their team. I retired from the U.S. Border Patrol. I spent 20 years as an agent. And about the time that I was preparing to retire, I became aware, I don't remember exactly how, of the Grenadier. I do remember it was before the first prototypes were out, before the first even renderings were available, because it was just a concept, but the concept really struck a chord with me. I enjoyed driving off-road with my time in the Border Patrol, and I really wanted to learn more about overlanding and off-roading and wheeling, as it's called.
Or whatever you want to call it.
Rock crawling. Or, I just bought into the story completely. I just fell in love with the concept.
So kind of a unique product at the time, but also manufacturers are kind of sneaky, right? How many times have we seen concept images, whether it's a rolling piece of clay or it's just like AI generated thing, and you go, wow, that's really cool, and then when they launch you go, oh, okay, so either like visually not so good, or what they promise in terms of perhaps the drivetrain, the spec, you're like, oh, okay, because they've got their sensible grown-up heads on, and it doesn't always get to where it should be. But I understand you were one of the first to have you live in Arizona, you live in Tucson, so you were one of the first, maybe not the first, but you were one of the first people to own a Grenadier. So you were kind of influenced by people saying, oh, what's that? Or, stop at a gas station and, oh, I like your, that's a cool G-Wagon, or that's a cool Defender. I know, but it's at least some people know now.
Right.
So how did that work then? Because it's...
well, like I say, I was an early adopter. The day that the reservation system became live, I think it was November 30th of 21. I sat up all night waiting for the time to roll over, and had my credit card ready, and I put in the reservation just as quickly as I could. And then shortly thereafter, they were just putting out little drips and drabs of information about what's going to be coming and what the Grenadier is going to be, and everybody in the community was so frustrated by the lack of information. And we were just getting whatever we could get. But
I mean, the thing is with a company is it's not it is a car company, but at the time it was a very early car company, so nobody knew about the brand, and it's not like they've got other legacy models that you can relate to, so it was unique, right? Because they were still trying to find their feet and whatever. So but kind of a unique vehicle. But did you have many people sort of stopping you and saying, what the hell is this? Or you're sitting at a light and someone's like, what the hell?
I get a lot of, hey, neat Jeep, or my brother's got a Defender too, and I do whatever model.
And I think the aesthetic of it attracts a lot of people, but as you and I both know, we'll come onto the Border Patrol stuff in a minute, but the aesthetic of it being boxy, and a bunch of right angles attract a lot of people. And we were actually saying before, if the Grenadier had come out and it was just front wheel drive and it was unibody and had a 4-cylinder engine, or all of the things that generally cars have, people would still buy it, just based on the aesthetic. But there's a practical side, right, to the aesthetics of having a boxy vehicle. You can see the corners, you can fit stuff in it, which people tend to forget. And a lot of newer vehicles are styled literally for the sake of styling it to look a particular way rather than having utility, right? So and that's the attraction as well. So when you were with the Border Patrol, obviously you drove lots of different vehicles, some better than others. We were talking about this off camera, getting them stuck on stuff, but did that kind of push you or give you any more of a, a better value judgment sort of system going on in your head to be able to select certain things, in the vehicle?
Right. Yeah, I was completely drawn to the full-time four-wheel drive. I think that's a tremendous selling feature.
Yeah.
All of the other vehicles that I've ever driven, I've always been two-wheel drive with a manual select.
Yeah.
Whether it be a lever or a dial or what have you.
Yeah.
But I think that, having the four-wheel drive all the time and then being able to lock the center differential, when you need to, or I do it as a habit every time I hit dirt. I just automatically lock the center differential.
Well, you're protecting the drivetrain, from just spooling up the rear wheels. You're protecting your tires, I guess, but you're protecting the trail as well.
Right.
You're being proactive, whereas a lot of people are reactive, right?
Right.
And then from an instructional standpoint, and if anybody is an off-road instructor or done any off-road instruction, you'll know one of the most challenging things to explain to people, I mean, it depends who the audience is what the center differential lock does and doesn't do.
Right.
Yeah. Because a lot of people are like, so hang on a minute, it's the same as a front differential, but you should lock it or shouldn't lock it, so we know where that goes, right? And it can be, you can end up digging yourself in a bit of a hole to try and explain it to someone. They'll leave being more confused.
You have to have a whiteboard.
Yeah, you see, it goes here and it goes there, and then the power. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's always that problem in instructing. But I mean, did that kind of push you? Did you drive some stuff that got stuck? And I guess that's a good way to learn, right? Getting things stuck and bellied out in the Arizona dirt, right?
Right. Well, monsoon season in Arizona is really no joke. They get probably 90% of the rain within about a 6 or 8 week period there in late July and August.
Yeah.
And the dirt and dust and just it's many people's concept of Arizona who haven't visited think that it's all sand and rocks, but it's a lot of clay, and it's dispersed clay within the sand. So when it gets wet, it turns into like thick pudding mud, and it's very easy to get badly stuck very quickly. So when I was in the Border Patrol, and anytime we got a hard rain, they'd say, they'd be watching the storms back at the station. They'd call on the radio and say, hey, we got a big cell moving through, get to high ground and get to hard road, because if you're out in the trails and it's raining, you're going to be out there until someone comes to recover you.
And then you're a risk to other people, and you're a risk. But I mean, Border Patrol work is hard enough without them to deal with stuck vehicles,
right?
I'm
in
assuming.
the driving range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of, you do quite a bit of, and we were joking about the terminology, off-roading, overlanding. You do quite a bit of that now with the Grenadier.
I do.
Did your work, and I know we haven't mentioned your wife, Susan, is unfortunately not here. So you were Border Patrol, she was in the Navy. What did she do in the Navy?
Right. She was a hospital corpsman.
Right.
And for most of her career, she was a hard hat diver.
She was a what, sorry?
Hard hat diver.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, she started off in aviation.
Right.
Kind of one thing led to another, and she was stationed in, I think it was in Puerto Rico that she made the transition. So she was assigned to a helicopter unit, and the dive team needed medical coverage. So she went out with them, and it just changed her life. So then she's like, I really want to become a diver. So one thing led to another. She went to dive school. She became what they call an independent duty corpsman.
Yeah.
So she could function without day-to-day contact with a physician to tell her what to do, and she just loved it. So she worked with the Navy SEALs, teaching them how to swim and how to navigate underwater using the cadence of their feet, as they're swimming. She worked with explosive ordnance disposal, EOD, mobile undersea salvage, and
lots of experience, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't realize she was extensively sort of qualified in all those different things, but with your experience and her experience, it makes for the perfect couple, right? Doing off-road driving.
We enjoy it. We actually, I mentioned earlier, I joined the Land Rover Club in Arizona there, and I was trying to become a trail leader with them. And one of the requirements for them to be a trail leader is you have to have the wilderness first aid training.
Okay. Yeah.
And I did that with, I can't remember the gentleman's name. He's one of Bill Burke's friends.
Yeah.
He also did the Camel Trophy. Anyway, he trains. He's a retired firefighter from
I know the
Phoenix
guy you mean.
PD.
Yeah.
Or Phoenix Fire Department.
I know the man you mean, but I can't remember his name.
So we took that class.
Yeah.
And yeah, far and above. We were the two most highly trained people in the class.
Yeah.
And we've always heard. I also have a medical background. I was a Navy corpsman for 6 years prior to the Border Patrol. And, we just have that mindset of you don't need to bring everything in the kitchen sink, but you need to be prepared for anything that might happen.
Yeah.
So our kit or loadout or what have you, that we carry with us when we go afield
is based on lots and lots of experience, right? So you don't go out in your truck with a warm bottle of Gatorade and a half charged up iPhone.
Now I have multiple people's worth of first aid equipment and a case of water and
yeah. And I think when you go out, I mean, do you go out on your own at all? Because some people do. Some people don't.
She doesn't want me to go out on my own.
Yeah. No, I mean just the two of you, just one vehicle.
No, we haven't yet.
No, and that's risky, right? Depending on where you go, obviously, you really need two people or two vehicles as a minimum is ideal. But yeah, it's nice to be overqualified than underqualified, right? Yeah. Because sometimes out on the trails, you do see people, who shouldn't even be behind the wheel. Never mind on a trail, right? So you'd say that your experience being in the Border Patrol definitely gives you that sort of, that little bit of an edge, in terms of. And in terms of the equipment, I mean, not just the vehicle, but what to put in it.
Sure.
And we were joking earlier about vehicles being overloaded, but yeah, people carry way too much stuff. Even just driving around the street, right? They carry all of this stuff on their vehicle.
And admittedly, I probably have far too much recovery gear, but I think I have every scenario covered.
And I was just going to say, it's about scenarios, right?
I have a dynamic recovery line. I have a static recovery strap. I have the winch. I have lots of soft shackles. I have a few hard shackles.
Yeah.
High lift jack.
And you can guarantee if whatever happened, whatever scenario you're going to come across, if you didn't have one of those pieces of kit, that would be the piece of kit that you would leave, right? Without just going nuts.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of overlanding then, Border Patrol is literally overlanding with a uniform on, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, it's just mostly driving on 2 tracks or dirt roads.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of going, as it's called, cross country.
Yeah. So where do you go now then? So you live in Arizona.
Live in Arizona. There are several trails around Tucson. I seem to spend more time around Florence. There's a box canyon area out there.
So the rocks, desert
rocks, more canyons and washes. So
Yeah.
little step offs and little rock crawling. Not so much like Moab where you're just going up the side of a hill or a sheer rock.
Yeah.
But some technical stuff. There's a few times that I've gotten out and gotten into situations where I had to stack rocks and use my traction boards and get over an obstacle and reduce the breakover angle so I could.
Yeah, I mean that when you do that stuff, that means it's worth going, right?
Right.
So
and it's memorable.
Yeah. Yeah, and you sort of learn to read the ground, right, and pick a way through. Yeah, to see. You kind of build up a picture, right, of wheels, say ramps, and if it's a ledge,
right,
can you drive up it if it's not very big? If it's lots of little ledges, then it's probably a kind of a ramp. But if it's if it's definitely a ledge, you turn it into a ramp, right, by putting some rocks and some traction buds here, there, and soon work it out. Yeah.
And I've had very good as we mentioned earlier off camera, the training I got in the Border Patrol was minimal for off-roading, but through the Hard Way Home experience with Mike Reed and Voyager Outdoors and Warner Ineos, I have gotten expert training. And Bill Burke. I went to his
those guys know what they're talking about.
And I feel there's very few challenges that I wouldn't feel comfortable at least trying to figure out how to get through it.
Yeah, and there is a thought process, right, that you've got to get into that kind of mindset of working things out. Yeah, for sure.
It's like a puzzle to be solved.
Yeah, for sure. So when you first started using your Grenadier, would you say that you were kind of a bit of doing beta testing kind of thing? Because it was being one of the early adopters, there's not much prior information on the vehicle, right? So go on, tell me about that.
Yeah, well, there were, of course, when it was first delivered, there were, the software glitches. They had to remove the trailer receiver hitch, all that. It wasn't compatible with the U.S. build.
Yeah.
So there was that. There was, a few software updates that needed to come real quick. But after the first few months, I've had no issues.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for a simple vehicle, right? That is, and when I say simple, a lot of people kind of would perceive that negatively, but I mean that absolutely the other way around. That the simplicity is devil's in the detail, right? That's what makes it good.
And that was one of the big selling features. That was one of the things that put in my mind that this was something that was extremely desirable, because as it was billed, as you could work on it on the side of the road in a third world country using hand tools. That was a big part of the message when Ineos first came out with the concept, the Project Grenadier concept. And that was very appealing to me. Although I'm not very mechanically inclined, I understand the value of something that's easy to work on. And so that was a large part of my decision.
I mean, cars now are a little bit more complex than they would have been back in the 60s or the 50s or the 70s or whatever. But a lot of people, when the Grenadier was coming out and had come out, when we did all the PTO1, for then reservation holders, the first time they saw the truck, we had lots of questions like, oh, can I get it with a carburetor? Does it have to have airbags? And you're like, well, no, you can't get it with a carburetor because it's not going to pass emissions. And yes, it has to have airbags and stability control. So there is some electronics on it, which is mandatory, right? It's got to have that stuff. But where we can, the simplicity definitely attracts people. And here, when they part exchange them, most of the stuff that's part exchange is way more sophisticated in terms of lots of electronics and stuff. So that's kind of nice. So you mentioned Trail Leader then when you were doing that with the Land Rover Club, and they were actually pretty friendly to you, right? Because
they were.
Yes, because they thought that there weren't going to be very many Grenadiers. Is that right?
Right. So I was at it was a PTO2. So it was a pre-production test drive on-road, the first on-road event that was available. And that was in like November of 23. So just before I took delivery of mine.
Right.
But I went to drive it, of course, because I just couldn't wait. And I met a gentleman there who was the president of the Arizona Land Rover Owners Association. And he said, well, there's not going to be a lot of Grenadiers, especially at first. And chances are of having a thriving club with a lot of members is probably not very realistic for at least the first year. So why don't you come on over and join the Land Rover Club? Because, in spirit, this is what the new Defender should have been. So I took him up on his word, and I've just had a ball. It's been a great bunch of folks to go out and ride trails with. They're more careful than maybe sometimes I want them to be, with the trails. But they're driving new Defenders in older Land Rovers, and it's not just Land Rovers, but
I mean, the thing is, car people, especially the off-road stuff, it becomes, if you're proper car people, and then you're like, oh, that's a cool Jeep, that's a cool Land Rover, that's a cool Nissan Land Cruiser, whatever. It doesn't really make any difference, does it? That's same thing. But that brings us neatly on to, so last year we had a gathering of all Grenadier owners, right? And we had, I think, it was nearly 70 vehicles, of which you were one.
I was. Again, due to my relationship with Mike Reed. He asked me to be a trail leader for that. And at the time, of course, I've reconfigured my truck several times over. And I call it car and truck interchangeably. My Grenadier. So at the time, I had the factory step tubes, which of course reduces your
side steps or
side step tubes, not rock sliders. So that naturally reduces your ground clearance.
You break over angle.
So Mike had kind of pegged me for the simplest trails to lead with, basically stock Grenadiers. And so in the interim, I had changed out those step tubes and gotten the Owl rock slider steps, which are
So did you remove the side steps with some tools, or did you remove them on the trail?
I had them do it with tools. No, they were actually fairly robust. I did scrape them a few times on rocks, and they didn't seem to have
they're pretty
a lot of damage.
So that brings us on to, you're going to be a trail leader out for the
next Moab.
The next Moab, which is on between the 1st and the 4th of May this year, 2025. So that's the Grenadier Gathering. And you're going to be a trail leader on that. And we're hoping for significantly more than whatever it was, nearly 70 Grenadiers.
I'm not sure the exact number, but I know we're well north of 100.
Oh, really, already?
They were, Mike has said, so to date, the largest gathering of Grenadiers has been in Germany. and it was in the low hundreds, 100. I'm not sure the number.
Right.
10, 12, somewhere.
Which is a lot for Europe, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're looking to best that,
Yeah.
if even by one, just so we can be the biggest.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Yeah, America's a pretty big market for Grenadier. I know it's more than Europe altogether, but yeah, it's a significantly important market. So yeah.
And Moab is just an amazing venue. You know,
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, and Mike Reed, by the way, everybody will reference Mike. He's from Voyager Outdoors. He's responsible for making this happen. They did a pretty good job last year. But yeah, we're looking to really have plenty of. So if you own a Grenadier, get in touch. And if you've never been to Moab, or even if you have been to Moab, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I'm saying that as a foreigner, so maybe I'm a bit biased, but I love Moab too.
And that website that they can check is ineoseventsusa.com.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for remembering that. So other than that then, next trip, where are you thinking of going? Where it's other than Moab?
Of course, Moab. Don't really have a whole lot of plans. I know Warner have got a few more Hardway Home events scheduled. I might try to do the one in August. I just really enjoy those. You know, you meet other Grenadier owners. Yeah. And I find it as a place to not only learn from them and learn from whoever the trainer is, it's usually Mike, but also just to share, you know, to help the other owners maybe, because they're brand new and they don't know
true.
how to activate the various modes.
Or people who are buying them who don't know. Well, it brings us back to the center differential lock question, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that will be done to death, I would imagine. Yeah, that particular question. All right.
And also, you know, Utah is to me the premier place to.
Yeah, Utah is just the amount of trails and space. Yeah, just. It mystifies me. Even just going down to Moab, it's like, oh, there's a trail here, there's a trail there. And if you look on your Onyx or Gaia, it's just, there's not enough time, right? You could be out all day. And I think I've said this before, I tend to see the vehicle. I get all geeky about all of the bits and pieces, which I'm guessing you do as well, all the features. Sure. And, you know, it's got axles and, you know, the transfer case and the differential locks and all that. But also, if you're kind of a bit more grown up with it, the vehicle's a tool, right? It's a tool to get you to see an old cool mine, or get you to a viewpoint, or just for the sake of, you know, it's a cliche, isn't it? It's better to travel.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a good point. So just this last weekend, I was out with the Land Rover owners, and we did Tucson Wash, which is up north of Tucson, near Mammoth, Arizona. Right. And it's not real challenging. I'd say it's like an intermediate, 3 or 4 trail. Yeah. But where we stopped for lunch was we went up this long winding trail up to the top of a mountain, and it was a saddle between 2 peaks, and they were really close together, like maybe 50 yards in between. And you could see north and south just all around for miles and miles and miles. And there were, you know, the mesas and the valleys, and you know, there were birds of prey flying overhead, and the saguaro cactus, and you know, we're sitting down, and you know, we had a little ring. We're all sitting down to lunch, and my wife looks over and she goes, you know, it just does not get any better than this. This is it. This is perfection. Yeah. And she's right. You know, the Grenadier gets you places that you would never be able to see otherwise.
It's some of those things are like, to me, it's like a movie, right? Some of the, like you say, the scenery, and like you say, it couldn't get any better. And it's, I don't know, part of life, I suppose, is appreciating that at the time, rather than, you know, later on going, I wish I'd appreciated that then.
Right.
Easy to say, right?
Or you look at a video and you go, oh, that's really neat. But then, you know, you get out in it and you've got a 360-degree view. You know, with the wind and the smells and the, you know, the spring blossoms in the desert are just amazing.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. The desert is always perceived, if you've never been to the desert, it depends whether it's semi-desert and where it is, but you always think of it as a dead place, but it's not at all.
There's so much life in the Sonoran Desert.
It is a pretty cool place to be. Okay, well, thanks very much then, Alan.
Absolutely.
For talking to me. Interested to hear about your history and what you did with the Border Patrol. Pretty cool thing to look back on. what we'll do now, guys, is we'll give you a walk around Alan's vehicle, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of the features and extras that he's put on his vehicle and why he's done that as well. So we'll pop downstairs. Okay, everybody, we're back downstairs. Sorry if it's a little bit echoey in here. I'm with Alan again. We've got his Grenadier. It's just come out of the shop and had some upgrades, which we'll talk about in a minute. So this is his Grenadier. The first thing we noticed about your Grenadier, Alan, is it's had a wrap on the front. So talk me through that.
Right. So the original prototype that I absolutely fell in love with had this color scheme with the orange nose wrap, the orange rear door.
Yep.
And originally, the configurator before the production was actually underway, this was an available option, and I had planned to get it. However, I guess due to cost concerns, and naturally they did not offer it from the factory.
Yep.
So as soon as I got my truck, the very first thing that I did when I got home was scheduled
it's very cool.
an appointment to get this done. And I got the vinyl wrap with PPF, the paint protection film, over the top to help with the durability. So it's
over the whole truck, right? Yeah.
More rock proof. Just over the vinyl. Okay. And then I got an 8mm film on the windscreen because they have a bad habit of catching rocks.
Yeah, upright windshields. Yeah. On an edge, you've got the German spec license plates. So with the talks about the IG 0001.
So the original picture of the prototype that I saw had the IG, as I say, IG 001 as the license plate. Yeah. So as soon as I could, when my other car, my Kia, came up for registration, I grabbed that from Arizona, made that as my custom plate. So that was actually on my Kia for about a year.
Oh, okay.
And then once I took delivery and was able to change over the registration to this one, I went on Amazon and made the Euro plate.
It's very cool. So I think, and if I might be wrong in this, but I seem to remember that this was put on for when we had Ineos Grenadiers following the Grenadiers, as in the cycle team, and they originally put this on to stop stone chips from the bikes.
Correct.
If I remember rightly. Yep. And then, as you say, for production reasons, it wasn't offered as an option, which is a shame because a lot of people really, really wanted that.
Right.
Can't help but noticing some Grenadier branded lights here.
Yeah.
Talk us through that. That's pretty cool.
Very interesting story behind that. I'm on the Ineos forum, which is the Grenadier unofficial owners and interested parties forum. So there was a gentleman on there who's an engineer that lives in Tennessee. Ben NTN is his screen name. He wasn't real happy with the factory auxiliary lights. So what he did is he started a thread and he said, hey, I'm thinking about designing some brackets so we can put some aftermarket lights in place of the factory lights, and does anyone have any options? And of course, people mentioned the KCs, which is, a big American black brand.
Oh yeah. Yeah. With the smiley faces, right?
And among a few others. And I'm a BMW motorcyclist, and among BMW and long range motorcyclists is Clearwater lights, just because they're so bright.
That's where I've seen them before. Right. Okay.
So I said, hey, what about, Clearwaters? And I kind of introduced Clearwaters to him, and, he got in contact with Glenn, the owner at Clearwater, and they collaborated and came up with this design. So we have the custom black circuit board. Normally they're silver.
Right.
And then we have the red Lambda, the Ineos Grenadier logo. And these are made by Clearwater specifically for Grenadier owners.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. But I mean, that was one of the very first things that when the Grenadier was, or the idea was even sort of bounced around, was that they really wanted people to, they knew that people would be using this as a blank canvas to personalize it. And that's a perfect example. So this has just been in the shop and had some suspension work. So talk us through that, because it's sitting a little bit higher than it would do normally, right?
So, so among the first things that I got was, actually the day I took delivery, I got the two 95s, which is the 33-inch tires instead of the 31.5s that come on at factory.
Yep.
And then shortly thereafter, maybe about 6 months later, I upgraded the springs to the Eibach 30mm Euro spec, which is actually the shortest lift that they offer.
Yep.
And that was just basically to keep rubbing to a minimum. I didn't want a tall lift. I have a kind of short inseam, and I didn't want to have to jump up into my truck. So I got a lift that I thought was good enough for, my purposes. But today, after talking with Todd here, the service manager at Warner Ineos, I have upgraded my shocks to the Fox 2.5 from Agile Off-Road. And they are fast and slow dampening adjustable. And the ride is supposed to be, not that the ride of the factory shocks is bad by any means. It's a good ride.
Yep.
But this is supposed to be so much better, and of course being adjustable.
So you're going to be looking for trails on the way home?
Possibly, yeah. Well, actually, from here, I'm headed to Colorado to go to Bill Burke's training.
Oh, okay.
And then on to Moab.
Yep, which we spoke about earlier. Yeah, well,
Yep.
we'll be down there as well. So this is pretty cool. This is a kind of a nod to
That is,
Ferrari, obviously. The what would you call that? The prancing camel, I suppose.
prancing camel, yeah. Camel rampant.
Yeah.
Camel rampant.
Yeah, it's funny because there's also a version of this in it when people used to have, and I use this terms loosely together, sporty Volvos.
With the moose.
With the moose, right? Yeah, when they used to have the V8, S80 and the XC,
Right.
some of the XC.
And
or
that's
XC90.
exactly where this came from.
It's pretty cool.
So when I was at the last rally in Moab, there was a gent from one of the forum members. His name slips my mind at the moment, but he was from New Mexico, and he had these on his truck, and I just was raving about how,
it's cool.
the tip to the history of motoring.
Yeah.
And he gave me a set. So
yeah, and it's perfect because a camel is, it's a four-legged, go anywhere. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
made for the desert.
Yeah. I think the nice thing, what I always like about the light colors with any vehicle like this is, not only is it utilitarian, but you get a nice contrast between all of these
Right.
accenty bits. We've got the rail on the side here, and you've put the owl side steps on, which are pretty cool.
Amazingly capable.
Yeah.
Again, I saw a vehicle, John Willenborn, the owner of Owl, was out in one of the trails in Moab, and his back tire slipped and he fell over on his side inside of a V.
All right.
And
Yeah,
the side steps took the entire brunt of.
Yeah. But he's a car guy though, isn't he? He's very much he gets
He's a genius.
Yeah, he gets it. Yeah. Yeah, and again you've got your little you've got your sort of accented pieces again, which is pretty cool. And what did your wife calls this? Remind me what she calls it again?
Dunkin', because it's the same color scheme as Dunkin' Donuts.
There you go. It's a very British name,
yeah.
Duncan. Yeah. Inside, seat covers, it's pretty standard. You've got lots of, you've got some cup holder extensions there. You've got spaces for communications and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very functional.
And yeah, the orange accents are all from Owl.
Right.
So they've got the grab rails in the anodized aluminum there. The dash, there's a little strip there that has the bullet points.
Yeah.
Kind of helps keep everything organized.
Yeah. It's pretty nice seat covers as well for when it's a little bit warm.
Front fur out of South Africa, very good. They're available on the forum also, or direct.
Awesome. Right, let's move around to the back and the side. Okay, then Alan, tell us about what you've got on the side here. And again, I'm assuming all this is functional stuff. You haven't just and I think that's the thing we were talking about earlier, is not just throw a bunch of stuff at the vehicle.
Right.
Make your credit card go nuts, and then hope that it will do the job. You've done it kind of the other way. You thought about what you need,
right,
and then apply that rule accordingly, rather than just throwing stuff at it. So go on, talk me through what you've got.
So first and foremost, the base of all the exterior stuff is these Bison Gear panels. Bison Gear is a company out of Poland. They were one of the first innovators. Them and Black Sheep out of Switzerland.
Yeah, and we're talking about this, the basis of this to fix stuff on. Yeah.
There are other places. Leitner is and Latec.
Yeah.
They're both available now.
Yeah.
Also, there are other brands now.
Yeah.
So that was the thought process, was to be able to mount these things that would be dirty or smelly, like the gas cans on the other side. That you don't want them inside the interior if they've got snow or mud or what have you. So by mounting them on the outside, you keep all that stuff.
And surprisingly, just I know I might be stating the obvious here, you have 4 of them.
Right.
Because guess how many wheels it has?
It has 4 wheels. Plus, if you need to stack them up to bridge over something, you can't just do one because they'll collapse.
Correct. Yeah.
And you need a proper shovel, not one of those foldable. You know, if you ever have to dig a vehicle out, you want a cross handle that you get a good
I find
purchase with.
having both. Those little ones are probably okay, but yeah, you need, like if you're dragging sand out or mud from underneath, you can angle it. But yeah, you're right. I think you need something substantial as well for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
And this arrangement on the top here,
Yep.
through that.
So that's the WeBoost Overland, and that's a cell phone booster. And what that does, it just gives you a little extra distance. You know, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you start to lose your cell signal, this hopefully gives you a little bit more usage. I also have the GMRS radio antenna. I got the little stubby mount, so it would be minimalist. And that is a Midland radio. And then stole the idea from another Grenadier owner at the Moab rally with Starlink. So I have a cellular setup at the house with T-Mobile for our internet. And my wife has a casita that she does taxes and things in, and we just weren't getting the internet from the house to the casita. So I started looking into Starlink, and it was actually almost dollar for dollar to change to Starlink from what the T-Mobile internet was. And so it's this is the Roam system, the mini Starlink Mini with the Roam package. Yeah, and it works under motion up to like 90 miles an hour. Wow. And it's 50 gig a month.
Assuming you did 90 miles an hour, because
assuming we could,
that would be illegal, obviously. So
under a closed track condition,
up to 70 miles an hour,
where it's 80
or 80 miles an hour. Yeah.
But it works great. It's actually I've used it in emergency type situations twice already. Get in the middle of nowhere, too far for the cell booster to work. You know, there was a Jeep guy that had broken his vehicle irreparably, so he had to get a tow, and we didn't have any cell service, and so I just turned on the Starlink, and
at least you've used it. Yeah, that's super. And that's, I mean, I was joking about doing the 90 mile an hour, but that's impressive that it works at high speeds, right? That's awesome. Yeah. All right, let's step around and have a look at the back.
So unfortunately, with the high lift jack mounted like I did to the step, it hits the board, so I can't quite open it all the way.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've done, first thing you touch when you open the car is the back bumper, or the back door handle, which factory is plastic and feels very cheap. It's 3D printed.
Right.
So this one is anodized aluminum, and you can actually comfortably grab it and lever the whole door open with
I see. Yeah, it's kind of like ergonomic, right? Yeah. Yeah, nice.
I've seen some other folks that have like a handle here.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's kind of neat.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff in here, and again, just to reiterate, you haven't just thrown a bunch of stuff in here and hope for the best.
Right.
So let's talk about the obvious elephant in the room.
The stereo. Yeah, so...
Because that's not normally what you would find in a Grenadier, but obviously a lot of people forget you have to drive to the trail, and you have to drive from the trail, which sometimes can be a long way. And this is your everyday car, right, as well?
It is.
So,
yes.
Talk us through that, because that looks amazing.
So I was a big stereo fan back when stereos were the big thing in the late 80s and early 90s in my first Mustang.
When you used to call them hi-fis, right? Yeah, dating ourselves, right?
Yeah. So I bought a bunch of Focal components from Crutchfield because they were on sale one Black Friday. And I had the intention of installing them in my Kia, but I just never did. So when I got the Grenadier, and factory stereo is okay, but it's really nothing great. I decided to contact a local stereo shop in Tucson called The Specialists out there on Auto Mall, which is in the middle of the main auto selling area. And they worked with me. They built a custom box here, installed the Focal 3-way speakers in the front doors. I kept the Hertz speakers in the rear doors because they're a 4-inch, which is kind of an odd size. And they sound good enough. They're just for fill. And then they put the little speaker pod, the tweeter pods, up on the dash. And by getting the speakers up higher than the doors, it creates a lot of good imaging. So you get really good.
You notice all that
stereo,
different spectrum of different sounds and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And this is fixed in. I mean, could you remove it?
So yes, you have to take the speaker out, reach inside, and then undo the screws.
So it's not removable.
It's bolted in through the back to the factory mounting positions.
Got you. Okay. And all the other stuff then, so basically this is what you would need to survive if you're out for a long time.
Yeah,
You've got
I have
your pump here, all some of the other stuff.
Yep. So I have the pump for, airing up and airing down, which of course helps quite a bit with traction and ride comfort on off-road
scenarios.
This is all hand tools. So screwdrivers and socket wrenches and spanners and what have you. I have some impact torque wrenches or torque sticks. I have a impact wrench that I carry. Yep. This is all winch extension line.
Yep. Recovery gear.
Static recovery, dynamic recovery. These are the soft shackles. Yep. And then I have a complete ARB kit here with everything hard shackle and recovery straps and all that stuff.
ARB bag, right? Yep.
And then let's see, I've got a jacking plate to put underneath the high lift jack. Yep. And just in case I, for some reason, ever decided I needed to do some electrical work, I've got a complete kit to be able to do the Deutsch plugs.
Okay, right. And you've got like a voltmeter and all that sort of stuff in there, I'm assuming, yeah. And then your fridge, which is obviously very...
Fridge, yes. I tell you what, I never thought I needed a fridge. I won this one at Overland Expo from Tread Lightly. And ever since I have started using this, I haven't used a regular cooler.
On what brand is it, sorry?
It's a Blizzard box.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of essential when you're out in the desert.
It is.
And this is a nice use of space up here. So talk us through this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Also from Bison Gear. It's their overhead storage rack. Yeah. And being that I have the Safari windows, I mean, the package to store the Safari windows that takes up a lot of space, Yeah. Even in the back. Yeah. So that's a good spot just to store this. Honestly, I've never had the Safari windows out, but should someday I want to take them out, I'll at least have the case for it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I've got, the other part of the jacking plate for the high lift jack. I've got an IFAK, which is an individual first aid kit there. I've got another IFAK here. I've got a third medical bag here. And then up front and in front of that, I've got a tire recovery or a tire patch kit. Yeah, plugs and...
So I think the Border Patrol stuff's rubbed off you in a positive way.
A little bit. Well, I was a Boy Scout and I was drilled into my head, be prepared, right?
Yeah.
So, and I even got a hand... Well, I can't get it out, but anyway. So... Shout out to Rob Daugherty, who is an Overland Gear guy.
Isn't that the only tool you'll ever need? See, that toolbox, you don't need any of those things. You just need this, right?
So he posted on Facebook one of his unfortunate occurrences where he bent his steel rim.
Oh, okay.
And he was able to fix it in the field with a heavy hammer.
Okay.
So now I have a heavy hammer. So I learned from my friend's mistakes. So hope to never have to use it.
That's always the best way, right? Learn from somebody else's mistakes.
But that's the one reason I got the steel rims is because I knew that aluminum wheels you can't fix in the field. Steel wheels you can.
No, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you for showing us, or thank you for being interviewed.
Certainly.
Thank you for showing us around this very cool Grenadier. It's always good to see what people do with them. So yeah, thanks for showing us. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much.